What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now. And brothers, we have a brother on here that is doing some major things, major things that ultimately will impact us all and impact our legacy going forward. And that brother is none other than Kevin Dedner. He is a father, but he's also the CEO and founder of Henry Health. Henry Health is a health startup app and digital platform that provides self-care support and mental health services to Black men. But also, Henry Health has an awesome and audacious goal that we're going to talk about a little bit later. He's a graduate of the University of Arkansas and has a master's of public health from Benedictine University. He's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. You're afforded one mistake in life. We'll let that slide. But fellas and the Black Fathers Now family, I want to welcome my man Kevin Dedner to the show. How you doing, my man?
Hey, thanks, Mike. And let me just thank you for the opportunity to be here. And, we connected a couple weeks ago and I felt an instant kindred to you and the work that you're doing. So I'm so grateful that we have this opportunity to talk and share the vision of Henry Health with your audience.
I appreciate you, brother, man. Thank you so much, man. And, don't take it personally. Anybody who's not a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, I give them a hard time. So, you're a friend of mine if I'm going to give you a hard time. If you're not my friend, I ain't going to say nothing about it. So it's all good.
I'm from the South, and my pastor back home used to say that there's always room at the cross, You can always be redeemed. So
I love it.
You can always be redeemed. There's always room.
There's always redemption. I love it, man. But let's jump into your story, man. First before we get started, I always like the brothers to kind of give shout outs, man. Shout out those that are important to you, that are part of your team, your family, anybody who means anything to you that you want to give a shout out, man. Feel free to go ahead and do so before we get started.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to my kids. I have a 12-year-old boy, 2 girls, 9 and 5. I have to, tell you that I set out to make my boy when, he was born. I intended to have a boy and I wanted to start to create my own legacy. And so, taking nothing away from my girls, I love them. But, the shout out is especially to my boy. He is the joy of my life because in him I see the very best of me. And he doesn't seem to have any of my faults just yet. And so for that, I am incredibly proud of him and trying to instill in him, the very best virtues that I have within myself.
That's powerful, brother. When we think about it, I was listening to a quote from, I think it's Patrick Lumumba. And one of the things that he mentioned recently in one of the talks that he gave, and I was following him on YouTube, he said, true success is when your successor succeeds. And so when you just said that, it literally sent chills up my spine and made me think about that quote in the sense that, yes, we can think about successors in business and we can think about successors in organizations and all of that. But when it comes to your legacy, who is your real successor? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's all about your successor succeeding. That is true success. So that's powerful, brother. Powerful. I love that.
Thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about your backstory, man. Let's tell us, where did this thing begin, man? Tell us your origin story. How did you go from, I imagine Arkansas is where you grew up, right?
Yeah, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so take us, take us back to Little Rock, Arkansas, and walk us all the way through to how you got to the point of being the CEO and founder of Henry Health from Little Rock, Arkansas.
I really appreciate that question because I have had the opportunity to reflect on my life the last few days as I've been, giving talks like this and giving interviews like this, and I really think that where I am today, that every experience I have had brings me to this point of being the founder and CEO of Henry Health. I am from Little Rock, Arkansas, mostly known for Little Rock Central High and the Little Rock Nine, integrating Little Rock Central in 1957. So a city with such, rich history. I also happen to be a graduate of Little Rock Central, and so I'm extremely proud of
Oh,
that.
wow.
And one of my disappointments about living on the East Coast, living in Washington D.C. now, is that my children will not be graduates of Little Rock Central, because me and all of my siblings are graduates of Little Rock Central, and we think of that as, again, legacy in itself as well. But to start out trying to at least create some biographical sketch of myself. When I was a middle-aged kid going into high school, early on it looked like I was not going to go down the right road. And sort of Little Rock was also known for our heightened gang wars in the mid '90s,
I remember
and
that banging in Little
yeah,
Rock.
so it was a really tough time coming of age. And so I went this sort of period, like my son is 12 years of age now, and I remember like that period from maybe 12 to 16 was a real transitional period for me, because our gang wars were picking up, and I had to decide where I was going to fall out in that, like what life I was going to take on. And early on,
Mm.
I had no choice but to associate with like neighborhood kids that ultimately became members of gangs. And so it was really traumatic in the sense that I knew people who were being killed, and literally saw people being beat to the point of death and so forth. And I just made a decision that I was going to do something different in my life. I tell my son, because he's in middle school now, so I went through seventh, eighth, and ninth grade and did literally nothing. Like I was doing nothing.
Wow.
And around the ninth grade, I went out with some friends one night, and we went to a party, and there was you know, um, a shooting at the party. And back then we used to say the party got shot up. I
Mm-hmm.
was on my
Mm-hmm.
way home, trying to make it home safely, because we were in the middle of the shooting. And I made a commitment, at that point, like, to God, if you just let me get home, I'll change my life. and
Mm.
and that night, I did get home that night, and the next morning I left town for a retrieve. It was the beginning of summer. By the way, it was the end of a year school party. And when I came back to Little Rock, I came back to Little Rock as a different person. I went to high school the next
Wow.
year. I never made less than an A. Foundationally, academically, I was in a bad place because I had not paid attention those first 3 years. But I was above, in the classes I was in, I was, I was way above them. And if I'd applied myself in middle school, I would have, sort of been able to do so much more. But at that point, I also became an advocate for like nonviolence and anti-gang stuff. And there were local politicians who embraced me, um, and really, in my mind at that time, I saw politics as the course of how you make a decision, or how you make a difference, rather. And so I,
Mm.
early in my career, started
Interesting.
pursuing a a career in politics. And I worked on the Gore campaign immediately after college. I went to work for the Democrat Party. In undergrad, I interned in the White House and on Capitol Hill. So I was really setting up this, pathway
Wow.
to, a career in politics. But I quickly got jaded once I got into it, right? And wanted to get out.
Really?
And it's almost like an addictive drug. I sometimes tell people that I am a recovering politico because I still find myself dibbing and
Mm-hmm.
dabbing every now and then. But
What had you jaded? Like, I just kind of, I mean, we're gonna go back to your story, but what was it specifically, or was there a specific instance, or was just a culmination of things that got you jaded to the whole, the
well,
life of
it's
politics?
yeah.
I mean, politics, we got to be
Well,
politically
that's a
engaged, but
loaded question. And
what was it?
in all candor, what
Okay.
really got me jaded was I was interested in the policy and the substance of policy, like how do we influence outcomes? And of course, when I was young, I couldn't articulate that. But what I would say is I was working in an environment that regulated me to like field activity, to getting folk elected, going to black churches and things like that. So
Mm,
I'm not saying that I thought those things were beneath me, but that's not what drew me into politics. And so I struggled for a few
wow.
years trying to find my way to become more of a thought leader, if you will, around like what are the policies, like how do I get to a place I was influencing policy and the dynamics of this, where I was living in the South. The elected officials didn't see people like me in that light. So I quickly got jaded and
Mm,
frustrated
wow.
saying, hey, I want a way out. And I applied for a job. Ultimately, I was applying for all kinds of jobs, but I ultimately got a job with the American Cancer Society as a lobbyist for them. And there, I really fell in love with public health. Was doing a lot of tobacco
Mm,
control work, cancer control work. Started to really think about the social determinants of health and health disparities, and went back to school and got my master's in public health. And after I finished my master's in public health, I wanted to round out my public health experience, and so I went to the state health department and and took on a role as the state HIV/AIDS director and had real hands-on public health work. And then I was recruited by the National Center to Prevent Childhood Obesity that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation had established. And it was an exciting time around the childhood obesity work because President Obama had just been elected. The First Lady had decided to make childhood obesity, part of her sort of public platform. And so we were across the country in public health thinking about how do we tackle this childhood obesity epidemic. And I went to this center, and maybe like 9 months into being there, the foundation decided to pull their funding. So I was like, "Oh, geez, what do I do now?" and
wow.
that's when I
Wow.
became a consultant. And as a consultant, I was working in the philanthropic space and with a lot of large nonprofits, helping on issues like childhood obesity. But one of the issues that I was working on that was really central to me was boys and men of color, and we've started to see that conversation shape up the last few years. And they sort of to try to put a bow on this and get to Henry Health. About 5 years ago, well, it was 5 years ago, I went out on the Saturday night, came home and turned on the television and learned of, the George Zimmerman acquittal, and I was just, really just, disgusted with the outcome, and went to bed. Woke up the next morning with a terrible headache, and my headache continued for several days. When the headache finally subdued, because I was doing all of this work in thought leadership for foundations, thinking about how we solve problems, I I woke up with this question around, could being a black man make you sick? Could it have a negative impact on your health? Right. And so, from
Wow.
an academic standpoint and an intellectual standpoint, like I wanted to understand that. So I started looking at the literature, um, and started talking to people trying to understand that. And then within a few days of, doing research, I came to the conclusion that, yes, there is this correlation between the stress associated with being a black man and like sort of the sociological pressures that we experience every day. And when I came to that understanding, like I really wanted to do something about it. In fact, my researcher at the time who now is our chief self-care officer, by the way. She since then has gone back to school and earned a PhD, and her dissertation was on Black men's wellness. I am incredibly proud of her, as you can imagine. Um, she and I at that
Yes,
point
most definitely.
we thought, well, maybe we could launch a national survey and sort of see what's going on in the lives of men. Um, I even bought the domain "What's Killing Black Men," thinking I'd write a book about it. I wrote a piece about, and I entitled it "What's Killing Black Men," and sort of a lot of news outlets picked that up around the country, and I did a round of interviews around it. So I knew that I was onto something, but I was running a consulting
Mm-hmm.
practice. I had a third child introduced into my life. I was only, like 2 years into my move across country. So I still had all of those things. I was working, 14, 15 hours a day. Um, life was just becoming very overwhelming. And I knew life was becoming overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of, me sort of having this downward spiral that eventually ended in me being in a period of depression because I just kind of, I couldn't handle all of the stress that I was under, the changes. Yeah, it came at me so
The
fast.
changes, all the
Um,
stresses. Yeah.
and it was a really painful time. I'm a spiritual person. I I was trying to make sense of what was going on in my life because there was never a time that I had prayed to God and He did not answer me. I mean, I always had like some type of, I was cool with God, and hey, if I needed something, He come see about a brother,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and and I got to this period
That's
that
right. That's right.
I prayed and um, I did everything that I knew, and nothing would work to, and I was just, I was getting sadder and sadder and downer and downer. And when I realized I had reached this kind of low, that I was depressed, I realized like this is not normal. And one of the things I tell people that being an entrepreneur is a really interesting life because you have these ups and downs. And some days, I'll be honest, even
Very,
now, like there are some days I'm like, you
very.
know what? I'm not doing anything today. I'm just going to rest. And because that's just the nature of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things ways that I knew
That's
that
right.
I was
That's right.
depressed is like, I woke up one morning and I was like, I'm not doing anything today. And then I realized, well, I've been saying this for a couple months. Like I hadn't done anything in a couple months, right? I was like, whoa, that's like, this is
Mm-hmm.
not
That's
cool.
real. That's
So
real.
at that
That's
point,
real.
I started, seeking
Mm-hmm.
out care. And, I bounced to 3 therapists before I found Dr. Tony Spann, who's now our chief clinical officer. And I often say that Dr. Spann helped me get my life back on course. And it's the way that I found Dr. Spann was
Wow.
just, I was talking to a friend, and I was admiring how she and her husband communicated. And I asked her, like, how do y'all get you all's marriage to work that way? That's really great. And she sort of said, it hadn't always been that way, but we found this therapist who really helped us figure things out. And I was like, oh, I need his number,
Mm.
because in my mind I was thinking, if he could
Mm-hmm.
help
That's
them,
powerful.
surely he'd probably understand me and what I was going through. And I was right. And I saw the moment I actually just talked to Dr. Spann this morning. We have a weekly one-on-one check-in that we just kind of make sure that our vision for the company is aligning. And I reminded him, I said, Tony, what I want to happen is I want men to leave their very first session um, with the same feeling that I left with when I first sat down with you. After I talked to you, I knew that things were going to be all right. Now I know that the platform that we're building, the medium in which they're going to have that experience is different, but it's very important to me that when they leave the session, that they know that everything is going to work out. So Dr. Spann is
Mm.
just thinking about it, kind of tears me up But I mean, I'll sort of say this full circle. When 5 years ago, when I came to this understanding about what unmanaged stress and untreated mental health issues was doing to Black men, I really, in my mind, how I understand it now, I made a commitment to God to do a work, and I was ill prepared to do that work. And I think we have to
Mm-hmm.
be really honest,
Mm.
and if we commit ourselves to something and we're not prepared, like God's going to give us the experiences we need to do the work. So, for me to make sense of like everything I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced, it's
That's
like I
real.
go back to that starting point of, you know, I, I, the George Zimmerman verdict literally being a stimulus to me saying, thinking about this and starting this work. But I was ill prepared once I had that experience. And so one of the things I say to investors, in tech, we're supposed to be very agile, very open minded, try this, try that, try this, try that, and I am trying very hard to be that. But one of the things that I do know is I know what it's like to be a
Mm-hmm.
Black man and be depressed, and everybody thinks that you have it together.
Mm. Mm. Brother, you you hit something right there, and what you just said there, I think a lot of brothers listening can connect with, and it's one of those things that unifies and connects us as Black men, as Black fathers, as brothers, that no one else can understand. I know what it's like to be a Black man, and I know what it's like to be depressed. What you just said also earlier, when you posed the question, it was like a hypothesis: could being a Black man make you sick? And when you say by being a Black man, you mean all that's associated with being a Black man, all the forces, all the pressures, all the issues, all the socioeconomic stuff, all the history, all these things that run through our psyche, that are in our DNA, that flow through our head, on a daily basis. Could all of that be making us sick? And the thing is, when you talk to another Black man, whether they have been diagnosed with clinical depression or not, they get it. They understand. And it's one of those things where I think that was so powerful about what you just said as well. The fact that you did a personal evaluation, you really understood that something wasn't right, but you also were, I would say, genius in a sense that you had the wherewithal to go find help. Because the other part of being a Black man, well, actually
Mm-hmm.
just being a man, period, is that we're supposed to figure it out. We're supposed to just get up and, you're working and you break your arm. Guess what? You tough through it until lunchtime and you go get your arm fixed
Mm-hmm.
and you make sure you're back before lunch is over. You fix it. You figure it out. We're not, our psyche, or the way that society kind of puts things on us as men, but then more specifically Black men, is that you're supposed to figure it out. You're by
Right.
yourself. And the reality is you're not by yourself. The reality is there are other brothers who understand and can connect with your story. That honestly is one of the themes and storylines underpinning Black Fathers Now, is by sharing brothers' journeys, sharing brothers' stories, that brothers listening to that. I just got a call yesterday about someone telling me about how they heard a story with one of the interviews that I did. And he was just like, man, it was like I was listening to my own story being told by someone else, right? We need to have that. There's not always social proof or social validation that our reality is something that other people are dealing with. That's why platforms like this are important. But that's also, from a transitional perspective in this conversation, the reason or benefit of having a resource like Henry Health available for brothers to access. So, speaking of Henry Health, what is Henry Health, and where did this name come about? Henry Health.
So hey, let me kind of put a bow on this story, because there's a
Okay.
piece I need to mention, and I'll actually
Okay. Go ahead.
get to it at the end. So Dr. Span helped me get my life back on track, and at that point, I thought I would rebuild my consulting practice, and I was tiddling tattling along, trying to, put it back together, when my co-founder, Oliver Sims, who's an angel investor, and Oliver's now acting as our COO of the company, contacted me and said, hey, and we both went to the University of Arkansas. He's a little bit older than me, so we were never in school together, but we've sort of been in the same social network for years. And he says, hey, Kevin, I want to come to DC and meet with you. He lives in Dallas. And he says, I have been angel investing in some companies, and I think that health IT is where, things are going next. And I like what you post on social media. I like, sort of, the things that you've done in health, and I want to just come pick your brain. And so Oliver comes to DC. In fact, I found last night, I actually was looking through my calendar, and I wanted to kind of really understand when was it that we talked. And we met October the 25th, 2017 for the first time about this. So it's been less than a year. Like we're coming up on a year right now. And when I sat down with Oliver, and Oliver's, explained, he made his pitch about what he wanted to do. And, I want to help jumpstart a company, and I'm looking for someone like you to work with. And the light went off instantly. And I was able to connect all of the dots instantly.
Wow.
And that was, as I said, in October of last year. And he and I kicked the ideal around for, the next, 30, 60 days. And then one day I finally called Oliver and I said, hey, Oliver, I was thinking, when people ask me what I'm doing, I've just decided to tell them that I'm working on building a app to provide self-care support and mental health services for Black men. And I mean, it was literally that, like it was literally that clear. And then in January of this year, we formed a company, and we've been pushing forward every since. Like we're this week we're supposed to go to market. We keep trying to make some tweaks to the platform, but if it's not this week, it'll be the first of next week. I mean, we're moments away from pulling the switch and taking customers. So I am,
Wow.
very, let me just say, I'm when you put all of the pieces together, I am incredibly humbled that things have unfolded the way that they have. Like I couldn't have orchestrated this myself. And so, I believe that, the remainder of my professional career should be committed to this work. And I am personally and professionally committed to, our moonshot of adding 10 years to the life expectancy of Black men. I mean, that and my kids is sort of what I'm living for these days.
You mentioned the moonshot, and that in essence is that's the big and audacious goal that I mentioned in the intro. You mentioned that the goal of Henry Health is to add 10 years to the life expectancy of Black men.
Right. Within 25 years.
That is powerful. Within the next quarter of a century. So within the next 25 years, the goal is to add 10 years to the life expectancy of Black men. I want to ask you first explain what Henry Health is and how the name came about, one, but then two, how is it that you are spearheading this goal of 10 years life expectancy? What does that look like? What are the things necessary for that to come to fruition?
Awesome. Yeah. So at the beginning of January, I have this public health background, so I always approach things from a point of trying to understand disease and find the right solution. So at the beginning of January, we had a focus group here in Washington, D.C. We just pulled together some people we knew, and we structured it like a real focus group, And, the very first question that I asked people around the table was, name a man in your life that, was strong and managed life well. And the name Henry came up at least 3 times in the conversation. And it's funny because, when we got to a place, because for a long time, we were just calling this Black Men's Health Solution. And we knew we needed a name. And so when we got to this place, that I was convinced that we wanted to give it like literally a name of a man. Like I knew that in my mind. I was like thinking from a marketing standpoint that made sense. And so when Henry was on the table, of course, the public health guy in me, and obviously Ashley's on our team. She has a public health background. So when we put the names in front of the team, we did not try to sway people, but we knew the backstory of John Henry, and so we just kind of let the team work through the discussion around the value of the names themselves. But we knew that the story of John Henry, this American folk hero who was known for how strong he was. He worked on the railroads as a steel driving man, and when the machine was invented, John Henry had this reputation of being so strong, and that the people were convinced that John Henry could beat the machine. And so they challenged John Henry to a competition with the steel driving machine, the hammer rather, the steel driving hammer. And so, John Henry ultimately beats the steel driving hammer, but he later dies from stress and from a heart attack and stress. And that is a story. That is the folk story, right? Now, whether or not it's true, we don't absolutely know, but it's been passed down from generations to generations. There's a story about John Henry we learned. So when we say Henry Health, we can also, we think of it in the sense that we are sort of John Henry. That's the story of a Black man in America. He appears to have it together, but inside he's crumbling, and even, I like to sort of, just remind people, even when you add the controls of higher income, higher education, that does not increase our life expectancy. So, what that means is, like, these brothers who show up and they appear to have it all together, something is happening in our life experience that is shaving years off of our life. And, what we believe is that unmanaged stress and untreated mental health issues are sort of at the root of that. And there's a strong correlation there.
Wow. I mean, the whole, when you mentioned the concept of John Henry, and it was this, this bigger than life, stronger than any man, more productive, more physically, domineering than any other figure, and he could beat a machine. When you mentioned that, and then you kind of juxtapose that to thinking about how Black men are, the image of Black men are portrayed in society. We're the athletes, we're the big guys, we're the ones who can jump, we can run, we're strong, we're fast, we're more physically dominant than, this, or more physically dominant than that. But then, to your point, there's still this thing inside that, yes, it might give us physical dominance in the game, but when it comes to the season, i.e. life, we don't have any more dominance, so to speak. And
that's really the core of what we believe. We think that the data supports it. Obviously we're anxious to try to commit to the body of understanding around how these issues impact Black men. But I think that there's enough compelling evidence there right now that, if you look, you'll find the correlation.
Man, this is powerful. Fellas, I hope you all are paying attention to that. I hope you're paying attention to that. The imagery of everything that looks good ain't necessarily good. Everything that appears to be well ain't necessarily well. Just because you're strong, that does not mean you're going to have the endurance or the longevity, so to speak. You could be strong in the moment, but then when it comes to, years down the line, that strength doesn't come into play in other forms. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of the imagery. Be mindful of how things appear, because how they appear isn't necessarily the reality of what's really going on. And so you mentioned the goal of increasing the life expectancy of Black men by 10 years within the next 25 years. What are some of the steps that, you're taking with Henry Health, or some of the steps that you all are spearheading that will actually lead to that, increase of 10 years or increase of a decade?
Well, obviously as a company, we want men to embrace Henry Health and our app as a part of how they manage their life. So our full vision of Henry is that it becomes an app that empowers men to make better self-care decisions, but we also provide mental health services. Now, we start out with this place of understanding that unmanaged stress and untreated mental health issues are sort of at one of the root causes of disease. And so, we're bringing therapists onto our platform, training them about the unique experiences of Black men so they can better understand them, and allowing for teletherapy. And that is sort of the mental health side of our business. But on the self-care side, we believe that through technology that we could support men in making better lifestyle decisions around things like diet, physical activity, setting reasonable goals, journaling. And so, the vision of what we're trying to build, or the vision of what we will build, rather, is that, that if you become our customer, that you will be our customer indefinitely, that we will always be a part of your life, helping you manage your life better. So this ideal is that if we could help you set reasonable goals, manage your stress, eat right, that these things will ultimately impact your health and improve your health outcomes, and obviously at the end of the day, your longevity. One of the things I want to share with your listeners is I am a constant learner, and I am a public health nerd at this point in my life. And so the other day I was with a researcher, and she was saying to me, "Now, Kevin, you do realize that there's more to your 10-year goal." And I said, "Well, yeah, I know it's a big goal, but what do you mean?" She said, "Well, have you did any reading about the crossover effect?" I said, "No, I'm not aware about the crossover effect." And she said, "Well, here's what you need to know. If Black men live to be 80, they outlive their counterparts." So,
Wow.
yeah, so it's
That's
sort of like, so
interesting.
right
It
now our life expectancy is 65 to 70 years of age, right? And to make that so real, last week I just buried a mentor who was 69 years of age. He died from diabetes. He had both of his legs amputated the last 2 years of his life. I am miserable about that because that is a completely avoidable death. And, like when I think about my mentor, I think about how we can build technology to help him ever avoid his diabetes becoming full blown. Right?
Mm.
So
That's real.
so
That's
really
very
I
real.
think of, it's like obviously there's this mental health side that's really important, but there's also how can we help people manage their lives better, like what they eat, and remind them to take the stairs as opposed to the elevator. Like these are real things that at the end of the day, little by little, they're all gonna add up. And I think the message that we want to convey to men is that you have the power to take full control of your health.
That's it. That is, and that's what I was trying to see if that's where you were going to actually get back to the notion of giving brothers the power to realize that you literally can control a lot of these factors. You're in public health, so you can probably give the specific statistics, but isn't like 75% of all conditions or ailments lifestyle related? Isn't it something to that effect? And that's across
But
like
yeah,
all.
it is like it's essentially the vast majority is lifestyle decisions, right? Absolutely.
That's right. The vast majority of ailments or issues that we tend to deal with are lifestyle decisions. And so when you think about that is, you lifestyle your way in a lot of instances, you can lifestyle your way out. But what do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's the truth. And so you think of Henry Health in that way, but you also think about, here, let me just also make this important sort of connection. Many risky behaviors are also associated with stress. Drinking too much, risky sexual behaviors, overeating, right? These things, if we can help people manage their stress, you know, we can help them make better lifestyle decisions as well. So, I think that that's the connection that we're trying to make. And I think ultimately that this is sort of not just for Black men, but this is really where I think payers are probably going to be
Yes,
trying to move
big
to,
time.
like, how do we keep our costs low by helping people make better
You
decisions?
know, you say something there that's interesting. Because you know, I worked for about like 10, 11, well, 10 years in the pharmaceutical industry, but then you add another 2 years of doing home health care and, you know, physician recruiting and everything. So the back end of looking at the business of healthcare, you know, the thing that's hard, and when, you know, sit down, and when I used to sit down and talk to physicians and they prescribe a protocol, or they prescribe some treatment regimen or whatever, the thing is, there is no back end accountability, meaning you cannot force someone to follow a protocol. You cannot force someone to take this medicine, or you cannot force someone to do these different steps to get to where they want to go. So where you all are coming from is interesting, because because in our system, because we live in a free democracy, so to speak, we don't have the ability to force people to do certain things to impact their health, but we can figure out ways to inspire them or convince them to take action on their own, which is a harder task. I think that's one of the things that a lot of practitioners, or a lot of providers, or a lot of, you know, physicians struggle with, is because the accountability part is there. They might give you a protocol that's supposed to work, but I can't necessarily guarantee that you're going to follow it the way that I insist you to do so. Something like a Henry Health, I guess, potentially could inspire that patient or that person who is in need of this protocol to take the initiative and be inspired to go and follow what's necessary to get the intended result. Does you kind of follow me there?
Absolutely. I think you're head on. I mean, you're absolutely, that's exactly the vision.
That's awesome. And so when it comes to Henry Health, so is this literally an app that's, you know, just links brothers to providers, or is it just a resource, and, you know, you kind of get feedback? I mean, when I open up, or once it's launched, which once this episode is live, Henry Health will have launched already by then. So it's a few weeks from, you know, date of recording that we'll actually release this. But so when someone goes to Henry Health, what should they expect? Like, what does that look like? What is that experience for a brother?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The first thing, let me just draw this distinction. In tech, we start from a place of what we call a minimum viable product,
MVP.
meaning we got to get, we're basically buying a car.
That's right.
No bells and whistles, and we get that out to prove that we can get customers and clients. So I want to be clear, when we launch, you know, today or early next week, is, you know, we're in this window of when we're going to launch it. But it is only for residents of Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland.
Okay.
And it's a pilot that's going to take us through the end of the year. And essentially what we're trying to do is prove to investors and key stakeholders that we can compel men to come in for therapy, that Black men do want to make better self-care decisions, right?
Okay.
So
the pilot is launching this,
right,
basically fourth quarter. Oh, the pilot's launching fourth quarter. Gotcha.
Yeah, and so and we start with basic therapy. Within 30 days, we're going to introduce group therapy. We're also, you know, probably within that 45-day window, we'll start doing like some self-care messages, some daily affirmations. So basically, we have a roadmap to how things are going to roll out. But this first group of men that we take, they're really going to be men who help us design out the platform with plans to go full scale and in early 2019. So I want to draw that distinction, is that this is really this period where we're testing the concept, trying to make sure that we can draw customers, figuring out how to get customers. Because, you know, listen, you and I have this conversation and people applaud it, but, you know, we need to know what will men actually compel men to sign up, right?
That's right. What is it? You have to figure out what actually works. I mean, everything right now is theory until you test it, right?
Yeah,
and
so absolutely.
And you all, in essence, are going to test this method, see how things work, and you're testing it in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Now, for brothers that do not live in D.C., Maryland, or Virginia, will there be an opportunity for them to sign up for an email list, or to just go to the website and kind of browse around and see what you have going on? Or is that an option for brothers who don't live in those particular areas?
Yeah, so what I would also encourage brothers outside of this area is to join our waiting list. Obviously, where there's a demand, we'll try to move into those states first. One of the things
Gotcha.
about our business model is that we're providing true therapy. So that means that we'll be able to accept major health insurance. And there's a lot of due diligence we have to do in that process because we have to go state by state and put agreements in place.
That's what I was going to ask you.
So
yep, the licensure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the thing is, it's important for people to join our waiting list because then we see how to like we know where people live, but if we see that there's a demand, we can prioritize those states. And so, obviously, let's be pretty candid. We know that there are some barriers to getting Black men to embrace therapy, right? We know that there are some barriers to getting Black men to take better care of themselves because they think that I'm strong, I'm macho, and so let's be clear about those things. So, we want to remove the barriers of like if people have health insurance, we want to say, hey, you can pay your copay, you can pay your deductible, and guess what? You can take advantage of our services. So our business is a little complicated in that regard, but people can join our waiting list, and some of the self-care supports. There will be some freemiums introduced, some things that are free on the platform that will be introduced before the year is over. And so men can look forward to some of those things coming out. We've been talking. I don't know if you remember Dr. Dennis Kimbrough out of Atlanta. So Dr. Dennis Kimbrough has agreed to do daily motivations for men on our platform. So that is awesome in that regard. People who grew up in the 90s remember Dr. Kimbrough. He was so inspirational. I remember I got his book as a gift in college and I read it every day. It kept me inspired. So the thought of, getting a message from Dr. Kimbrough every day is really exciting. So we're really excited about that. So there'll be some things that'll be introduced that'll be free, but this rollout plan for us is pretty complicated. But men need to sign our waiting list to let us know that they're interested. And obviously, people need care now.
And how do they do that? And how do they
Henry-health.com. There is a page that says join our waiting list. Join our waiting list, and from there, you become a part of our database. We start sending you updates, and when we come into your state, you'll get a personal invitation from us.
Awesome. So henry-health.com. And that'll be in the show notes, fellas. And then also like social media too. Like you're active, or you all are active on social media.
Yeah.
As well,
so we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Henry Health app. And on Facebook it's Henry Health. So we're pretty easy to find. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Dedner, Dedner. And I'm often posting on behalf of the company. So people can, we have I think a really strong digital footprint. So people can follow us and pick up messages from us.
Cool. And so fellas, most definitely look at, the show notes is there, but it's henry-health.com, or on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's at Henry Health app. Or you can also catch K Dedner on Instagram as well. He posts a lot of good stuff. And it's interesting. That's the initial way that he and I connected, because there was a reposting of this infograph that I think you put out there regarding the things that are stressing Black men, or the 5 stressors of Black men. And I saw that from a friend. He had reposted it. And I reposted it as well, with Black Fathers Now. And then I went through the backstory and figured out who it was. And then I found Kevin. And then that's how the whole connection started, because it started from one of the infographs that you posted that was extremely powerful in regards to Black men. So most definitely, fellas, make sure to check them out, connect with them. And if you're in the DC, Virginia, or the Maryland area, so if you're in the DMV and you're listening to this, make sure to go to henry-health.com and sign up, and I guess potentially get involved in the pilot program.
Yeah, and if there are men that are in the area and they know for sure they'd like to participate in the pilot, they can email us at hello@henry-health.com, and we'll respond pretty quickly to them.
Okay, gotcha. So, fellas, if you're in the DMV area and you're interested in the pilot, you can either go to the website or you can just email hello@henry-health.com and be a part of this dynamic project that ultimately we're going to claim it, will help to add 10 years to the life of black men over the next 25 years. And so with that, the formation of this, your life story, your journey, coming from Little Rock, Arkansas, going into politics and, kind of getting jaded by the process, but then finding solutions in other aspects and going into consulting, but then, also being having to deal with, this bout of depression, but then coming to the realization of solutions, are there. We just have to open ourselves up to finding those. How has all of this impacted you as a father? Remember, this is Black Fathers Now. How has all of this impacted you as a father?
Well, it's funny. I actually just did a podcast with some young men at Wayne State, and these brothers are pretty awesome. By the way, I think their podcast is called Mental Health Matters, and
awesome.
Yeah, do check them out. But so they asked like, what would be my advice to young people, and certainly their advice. The advice I would give to young people is the advice I give to my own children. And one of the things I did not know when I was younger was that it will all be okay. I thought I had to make it okay. And I think that most black men we get in this place of overdrive. We're trying to make things happen as opposed to letting things happen. And making things happen puts this level of stress on us that can become unbearable. I'm not saying that you don't be diligent and you don't work hard, but this notion that everything in life should be difficult just isn't true. That's the place I've come to. You shouldn't have to kill yourself for what you want. And I think that's essentially what we've been doing. We kill ourselves for what we want. So back, before I fell into depression, I was working so hard trying to create this life that I wanted for my kids, for my family, for myself, trying to be this man, but it was killing me. It was literally killing me. Like, I understand that now. It was shaving years off my life. I can literally look in the mirror now and see the stress that's gone from my face. So, the advice that I give in that regard is everything's going to work out. It's okay to make a mistake. Like I tell my son, my rule in my house is when it comes to school, did you do your best? And most of the time, now, let's be clear about what doing your best means. And because we have this understanding, did you ask questions when you didn't understand? Did you go for extra help? When you studied, was it nice and quiet, or did you have the television going and your phone in your hand? So your best means truly your best. And so in my house, I don't care what grade you bring home, but I need to know that you did your best. And that's the thing that I think that we need to kind of embrace as black men, is that your best is enough. Like, this sort of creating this competition that doesn't exist. There was no reason for John Henry to be competing with the machine. There's no reason.
That's powerful. Can I tell? I mean, your best is enough, fellas. I hope you realize that. Your best is enough. You are equipped with everything necessary to live the life that you are called and supposed to live.
Right.
Your best is enough. Your best is enough. You have everything necessary. It's this concept that we always look out for opportunities, whereas if we take a step back and look in, we've always had everything necessary. But the thing is, are you still enough to listen to God talk to you, to tell you this is what you need to do? I posted something on Facebook the other day. It was pretty funny. I was going to the gym, and one of my buddies who works at the gym was going in, and he had this, all his food, all meal prepped in his little container going into work at the gym. And I laughed at him. I was like, you know what they used to call meal prepping back in the day? And he said, what? I said leftovers. And the thing that's funny about it is, folks have meal prepping services, and they have, folks prepping meals for weeks at a time, and folks go and get their portion this and portion that. But your grandmama called them leftovers back in the day. So somebody had the wherewithal to take leftovers, package them, rebrand them, and market them as meal prepping. And now it's a multi-million-dollar industry. So I said that to say, sometimes you have opportunities right under your nose. Something as simple as leftovers could be rebranded as meal prepping. And that's just an example to let you know that what you have in front of you is enough. You just have to be still, quiet enough to listen, observe the opportunity. But then when that opportunity shows itself, you got to have the cojones to step up and take action on that. That's it, man. Like that, fellas, if you don't get anything else aside from visiting Henry Health and checking Kevin out on social media and following him, and if you're in the DMV, signing up to be a part of the pilot program, you do all of that. That's default. We're going to do that regardless. But from the standpoint of his story, if you don't take anything else away from this, realize that you're enough. You are enough as a dad, as a man, as a professional, as a member of society, as a contributor to the world. You are enough. Know that. Know that. Brother, oh my gosh. So Kevin, man, as we kind of wind this thing down, man, is there anything else that you'd like to leave with the Black Fathers Now family?
We covered a lot of ground. I just want to, say thank you for the work that you're doing. I think that fatherhood is so important, and all of us are trying to be the very best fathers that we can be. And as I think I alluded to earlier, that last week I was a part of funeral services where one of my mentors, who was 69 years of age, passed away. And I was just thinking about, my father died when I was 10, how I have taken pieces of men and their personalities to develop who I am today, right? And what was interesting, the fellow who we funeralized last week, I had never admitted how much I wanted to be like him. So much that I even bought a house similar to the house that he lived in. And so, what I'd say to
wow,
to
that's interesting,
that you're being somebody's father and setting an example for them that you don't even know who's watching and what they're trying to mimic. That's that you're doing.
So that's why we have to be mindful, and it goes back to taking action and doing the things that are necessary, but doing the things that are right, because we're not necessarily living life just for ourselves. Remember the quote that I mentioned earlier in this interview from Patrick Lumumba, true success is when your successor succeeds. So are we leaving those crumbs of inspiration for, the little ones that are coming after us to grab onto and take the crumbs and put them together to actually make a cake that allows them to succeed? It's not just about us. It's about the next generation. It's about, the audacious goal that Henry Health is going to spearhead, in which Black men live 10 years longer within the next 25 years. Are we doing the things necessary now that lead to that?
Yeah. So one of the things I will say in closing, we're trying to work out the particulars, but at the beginning of 2019, we're going to do commitment letters around this 10-year goal. And I certainly want Black Fathers Now to commit to the work and the idea of adding 10 years to the life expectancy of 25 years for Black, 10 years within the next 25 years for Black men. I think that that's a goal that, that all of us can get behind. And I think that, the national organizations will join in, and having you all remind your listeners of what it means to be a part of that commitment. I'd really be excited to have you a part of it.
Man, you got it. It's a done deal. Black Fathers Now, the family. We are a part of that. We are part of this commitment. So whenever it comes out that we need to sign something and put our name behind it, we are 100% behind this movement to add 10 years to the life of Black men over the next 25 years. Brother, we're down.
Awesome.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. And man, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to, in the midst of the launch and everything to share your story with us, man, and share to the world about Henry Health and your story and where you came from and what inspired all of this. But then also some steps that we all can take to live better lives and, be better versions of ourselves. So thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Man.
Thank you. And thank your listeners for listening in as well.
No doubt. And fellas, as always, for real, make sure to show our guests some love. Make sure to follow Kevin Dedner on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can also check him out or check out the company Henry Health App at Henry Health App on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can email them hello@henry-health.com. hello@henry-health.com, and let them know that you heard about them on Black Fathers Now, and be a part of their movement. If you're in the DMV area, make sure to subscribe, be a part of the pilot. If you're not in the DMV movement, in the DMV area, make sure to, get on the list so that once Henry Health opens in your area, you have access to join it and, help to become the best version of yourself. So y'all definitely show them some love. And as always, definitely visit blackfathersnow.com. Follow Black Fathers Now on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Definitely give us a shout out, share this episode. This should help a lot of brothers think about life a little bit differently. This is brought to you by Black Family Apparel. Visit blackfamilyapparel.com to grab some awesome apparel that celebrates the nuances of the Black family, as well as grab a copy of my book, Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto. Grab a copy, Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto, 10 commitments that celebrate excellence in life and fatherhood and the celebration of Black men. Again, grab a copy of that. You can grab one on Amazon at IamMikeDorsey.com, BlackFathersNow.com, anywhere. And fellas, until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace. Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit BlackFathersNow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.